All right, everybody. Nothing like going live right before a big soccer match for the US soccer team. But it's time for the tight 10. Let's do it again. All right, catching everybody up from where we were last time, we have a note about Chris Rodriguez, who figures to play an important role early in Liam Cohen's offense. They want to be more physical, and it's fair to assume that Tootin will get the lion's share of the work without Chris Rodriguez. So basically, they want him to be the bruiser, and if he's not healthy, then Tootin's going to do everything, basically. There was some notes about Quentin Johnston. Basically, that Quentin Johnston should benefit a lot from this YAC-heavy offense. In college, he was more of a YAC player, but they kind of miscast him in this deep X receiver role, which I'm actually writing an article about right now. James Conner and Trey Benson have been sidelined due to injury. That's something I didn't know, actually, but it sounds like they should be back for training camp. Bo Nix, actually, this is somewhat old now, but Bo Nix is actually back at training camp or at minicamp and taking reps, and he should be totally fine by training camp. I just thought this was funny, so I'm going to keep pushing this as a take, but everybody's like, "Hey, Tootin, oh, he's so sweet," and then Chris Rodriguez like, "Oh, hello, human resources." Just it's just funny. Like they both had really strong metrics from last year. Those metrics don't have a really strong correlation to year over year, so it doesn't matter. But it's just funny that like two guys that did really well last year from an advanced metrics perspective, like people treat them completely differently. More Xavier Thomas buzz, but basically on a team with a lot of good skill players from Roma Dunes on down to DeAndre Swift, there's no denying someone like Thomas simply looks different. It's Underwear Olympics. He's doing well. I don't think he's going to be a focal point of the offense by any means, and it's going to take him maybe like 5-6 weeks to be involved. But it's an interesting dynasty play and potentially like late round dart throw that he's a big play player, so he could hit really big late in the playoffs. The Steelers wide receiver 3 battle, it sounds like Roman Wilson's the one that's leading that right now, but Jeremy Bernard's getting a lot of praise, and the ideal situation is that Bernard is wide receiver 3 and Wilson is 4. And I think that's probably what will end up happening by the end of the season, especially because players and coaches have basically said Jeremy Bernard looks like he's pro ready, like he's just, a guy who takes care of business. Some additional Jalen Waddle stuff. So they're using him creatively with pre-snap motion and on screens. This pod actually compared him to Brandon Cooks and Sean Payton's scheme, where he had, like basically close to 1,200 yards both seasons with Sean Payton. And actually, he played more of like an underneath role when I was looking at the data. It wasn't like the Brandon Cooks that we think of where it's like, oh, big play receiver, 4.2 speed, all sorts of stuff. Like they had him doing slants and like little like dig routes and all sorts of stuff like that. Eli Heidenreich has to beat out Caleb Johnson. So basically, the way he makes the roster is that they think that he's indispensable on special teams and in the pass game, which is very possible. Basically saying that there's not much to expect from Max Clare's rookie season. Like the Rams bring tight ends along slowly. There's a deep room. Like he's probably not going to play that much. But if there's injuries, which there always are with Higbee and Parkinson, there's opportunity. Commanders updates. Basically assuming that they're going to double their use of tight end sets, 2 tight end sets. They want to disguise the run and pass games to blend them together. There's a more balanced and they want to be more balanced between the run and pass splits. And then, they're trying to get everybody involved in the middle of the field between Jacoby Lane, Luke McCaffrey, and Antonio Williams, who are mainly running in the slot, all 3 of them right now. But with 2 tight end sets, those guys aren't going to play as much because they're playing in the slot. And then the article also outlined that Chig is just doing really well in Blau's offense, which focuses on tight ends a lot more. This writer, Matt Caller, doesn't think that the Vikings will sign a meaningful veteran running back. And I actually had an exchange with him that was like, who's even available? And we talked about Najee Harris and a couple other guys. And he was like, yeah, I don't think they're really going to be involved. Chris Godwin keeps standing out. I mean, I have another note on him later, but basically the OC, Zach Robinson, used him in the slot for most of the camp, and he was finding space and moving fluidly in that role. The slot role in that offense is really important, and I think that it's what everything that I've read is that's Godwin's spot. Since the Chargers didn't make any moves at wide receiver, they're basically saying like that's a big endorsement on Quentin Johnston and then also Trey Harris, and that all three of the receivers look pretty good so far. Browns quarterback competition. I have more updates on this. So the big thing here is that like it's just a 50-50 battle right now still. And we don't really need to talk more about it even in future things until training camp. Spring performances for Denzel Boston and Isaiah Bond were really strong. Casey Conception also had a strong spring, but it sounds like the other two, Boston and Bond, were the ones that really, really stood out. AJ Brown, he's trying to be a leader and win over teammates. He's going first in line in drills. He's leading stretches. Seems like he has his head on straight. So I think the big thing for him is make sure that knee holds up, buddy. That's it. Patriots are looking around for a vet tight end, so that just kind of speaks to what they're thinking in terms of Eli Raridan. They wanted to run more two tight end sets this year, and it sounds like they might not be able to because of that injury to Julian Hill. Aaron Glenn had a quote about having a three-headed backfield. I have more on this later, but it sounds like it wasn't 100% that he just like kind of liked having these guys involved. But we'll touch on that in a bit. I keep hearing a lot about Quentin Johnston and how this new offensive attack is going to help him. Kenny Gainwell and Bucky Irving updates, same consistent message that I keep hearing. So Bucks were excited to get Bucky Irving back at practice. He came back. They're really excited to have Gainwell, who's also looked really good. And then, keep hearing it's a 1A, 1B situation and it's different than what they had with Rachaad White, that they believe that Kenneth Gainwell can contribute in the run game too. So like a true like 50-50 type of split with Sean Tucker maybe being involved in terms of like, short down and distance type of runs. Keep hearing a lot about Jaden Blue. There's going to be more on him soon. This was maybe a fan article, but it was good to get some insight and perspective on the Chiefs running back situation behind Kenneth Walker. But article touched on Emmett Johnson. While he will be second fiddle to Kenneth Walker, there is no doubt Johnson will find some playing time in 2026. And then Amari DiMercato, he's in a competition with Emmett Johnson, hoping he can be reliable backup to Kenneth Walker and push for a roster spot. So it sounds like DiMercato isn't even guaranteed to be on the roster at the moment. Clint Kubiak kind of cautioned that right now we're in underwear Olympic season. So just, don't worry about what's happening. Like things change so much when we get to training camp, which is a good note because it's true. But that doesn't mean we can't glean some things from what's happening right now. More on Xavier Thomas. Don't be fooled by Thomas's spot on the wide receiver depth chart, wherever that might be. If he shows the kind of playmaking ability he has in practice, when games roll around, the Bears are going to find ways to get him involved. He's going to be a gadget player eventually for the team this season. There's Khalif Raymond, who, has never really been a full-time player. So I just kind of see them envisioning them like swapping in and out when they're in 11 personnel. Texans projections. This was interesting because I didn't, I always think of Nico Collins as an X, but this article had him listed as the Z with Jaden Higgins as the X. And then we all obviously know that Jalen Noel is going to play like that F role slot. And then it had Tank Dell as wide receiver 5. The Tank Dell stuff to me is just like, we don't know what he's going to be. The team doesn't know what he's going to be. Eventually, that will all get figured out. People have been commenting on this a lot too. The Eagles wide receiver 2 battle. I think there is a battle. My personal perspective is that Dontavian Wicks, if they're going to go with a 2 wide receiver set, Dontavian Wicks will probably be the other receiver opposite of Devonta Smith more often than I think Mekhi Lemon will. And I do think that they want to go 2 tight ends more often because that's kind of the way that Green Bay oriented their offense, which is where Sean Mannion came from. And we're going to see some Johnny Munt with Dallas Goedert out there. And Lemon's missed practice. And Dontavian Wicks isn't a bad football player. He's actually a good football player. He just can't catch the ball. And he's a good blocker. So I think it's a little bit of an uphill battle. Maybe by end of season. There's also questions on whether Lemon could play outside in general. I know Brett Whitefield didn't like him as much as like most other people did. So I'm a little skeptical of where that's going. Again, back to Jeremy Bernard. Basically, the team is saying like he's a pro and he's a pro ready. Seahawks running back coverage. So Jadarian Price will compete alongside George Holani and former Green Bay Packers running back Emmanuel Wilson, who signed with the team during free agency this offseason to determine who will be the starting running back. The advantage leans towards Price, but the job won't be given to him. He will have to earn it. He's probably going to play a substantial role. It's just a matter of like how much they split up that backfield, and I think that they're going to have George Holani kind of fill the Zach Charbonnet role. Maybe the Charbonnet role is split into 2. It's like the pass catching portion that goes to George Holani, and then the bruising back maybe goes to Emmanuel Wilson. So we'll see how it plays out, but that's kind of how I'm seeing it right now. There's no guarantee that Chris Godwin's back with the Bucs in 2027. Even if he has a good season, they may just choose to move on because they kind of set themselves up for the future where Buka can move into the slot, McMillan can play his natural Z slot, and then Hurst, if he actually like shows up, can play the X in 2027. Commanders updates. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt had a hammy issue, but he's fine. He actually came back recently. And then Anthony Lynn compared Kaytron Allen to Chris Rodriguez, and they want him to play that Chris Rodriguez like role, being the bruiser. There's been a lot on Brandon Ayuk. I'm not going to cover it that much, but he's basically going to get cut eventually. The Titans O-line is still shuffling. There's multiple pieces in the air. I'm very worried for Cam Ward because that offense line was not good last year, and I don't think they did much to improve it either. And J.C. Latham's also kind of been missing practices lately too. So I'm pretty worried for that offensive line and what that means for him in 2027. I think that would mean good things for Wandale because they would just check down, but it could hurt Carnell Tate. Kirk Cousins looks good enough to start right now. The Raiders might wait till December to put Mendoza out there. We'll see what happens. If that team's bad, they're going to put Mendoza in. The Jets' number 2 target right now is Adonai Mitchell, but the Jets expect to push from first-round wideout Omar Cooper Jr. And then on top of that, Kenyon Sadiq's been missing from training camp with a hernia surgery recovery. Carnell Tate looks good at OTAs. There's more on him later, but it's good that him and Cam Ward have developed a lot of chemistry already. Someone commented in the chat that I said Dallas Clark. Yeah, I said Dallas Clark first, and then I went to Dallas Goedert. I'm sorry. Bo Nix expected to do team drills. He's back. He did drills already. So now it's just a matter of what he does in training camp, which is going to be full go based on everything that I've read. The Saints pretty much want to keep Kamara, and Kamara wants to stay with the Saints. They just want him to take less money, which I'm sure they're going to figure out. I'm pretty certain he's going to stay on the team. Fernando Mendoza is impressing coaches and teammates with his attitude and approach. What else would you expect from a guy like him? He's had some good days and he's gotten some practice with the first team offense, but Cousins looks better so far. The team's just going to slow play him. Travis Hunter, he's going to be the top boundary corner for the team full time, and long term he'll play both ways. Right now he's going to play like a situational wide receiver role, and I've posted a lot of videos of him standing there with the offense. So I do think he's going to play on offense. It's just a matter of how much, and I feel like he's kind of like a handcuff where if Brian Thomas got hurt or if Parker Washington got hurt or Jacoby Myers, like they would slot him in a little bit more. Doesn't mean he'd play like 100% on offense. It would just be like, yeah, maybe he's a 60% player if one of those guys gets hurt, which makes him a solid like best ball pick. Cam Ward's been struggling at practice. I think we all know that. We've heard that a lot. Saleh says he's not very worried. I'm still worried about Cam Ward. He's not very accurate. And now he's also missing J.C. Latham in practice, and that offensive line is not very good. Penix will be cleared for 11 on 11 soon. The Bucs hope that Mecca Egbuka can develop into a wide receiver one with Mike Evans gone. It's a really strong question. It's one of the biggest questions of the offseason. Is it going to be Egbuka or is it going to be Chris Godwin that steps into that role? Or Jalen McMillan if he surprises. Ben Johnson. So this is interesting. So Ben Johnson is likely going to start pulling out stops from the Shanahan tree when it comes to like their rush offense, because they hired running backs coach Eric Studesville, who came from Miami, and so like that offense from Miami that was under Mike McDaniel, they want to like start taking some plays from them as well. So I think we're going to see some interesting new developments in that rushing offense. All good, of course. Keep getting updates on Marshawn Lloyd, but basically he started a new intense training regimen with Dr. John Meyer, but like last year he was doing the same thing that Christian Watson did, where he went to Christian Watson's doctor and figured out how to that his two like evening his right leg to his left leg. But this year he's doing something even more intense, and he's sticking around Green Bay to keep up with his training program. 49ers Insights. Just reading that George Kittle could miss week 1 just because of the travel component, not because he won't be healthy. And then, week 2 through 4 is all at home. So there's just upside in sitting him 1 week. Shanahan really likes Ricky Pearsall, thinks that he's really good and that he's a good fit with Mike Evans. I kind of agree. I'm just worried that Ricky Pearsall is never going to be healthy. CMC is training like he's going to get 35 touches, and this article thinks that Demarcus Robinson won't make the team. There's some risk along the Rams O line with some of their with their starting left tackle getting into trouble, and that they might end up signing a guy like Taylor Decker to take that. Ravens are considering options in free agency or trade market for starting center after losing Linderbaum. I think that makes a lot of sense. They basically have like nothing at center right now, and they're just like rotating guys. So there's some risk there, going from like the best to maybe the worst in the league. And then there's just speculation on whether they might end up, the Ravens might end up signing another wide receiver, like a veteran, like Stephon Diggs, Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Debo, stuff like that. Or if they really like Tez Walker, Elijah Surratt, and Jacoby Lane. I think that they're going to sign somebody just because I keep hearing little jabs about it. And I feel like there's still some uncertainty with Rashad Bateman too. Like, can he stay healthy? And like getting a vet in there now can help them sustain like injuries to Bateman. Patrick Mahomes, I think he's going to be ready for week 1, most likely. Jalen Royals was making some highlight plays, and Cyrus Allen looks pretty good out there. We're not going to see anything from Cyrus Allen this year, but maybe a dynasty stash for a little bit. Bengals making the roster, Chase Brown, Samaje Perine, and Taj Brooks. I still have, like, some hope that, like, if Chase Brown got hurt, Taj Brooks might do something, but, it's then. Parker Washington expectations, he said himself, like, that it was expressed to him that he's gonna get more opportunities this year than he did last year, and he wants to make the most of those. I think that's really interesting. The question is, like, how much does he play? Liam Cohen mentioned he was talking about Trevor Lawrence and just talking about what last off season looked like versus this one. He's basically like, we don't have to teach Trevor Lawrence like anything anymore. We're not teaching him like footwork or reads or anything like that. Like, he can just go out there and play and feel relaxed. And Trevor Lawrence has said as much too. So it's very interesting how that's going to transpire. And, like, is there more upside that can be unlocked from that offense? Some Jaguars notes. They want to play a little bit more 12 and 13 personnel, not too much though. That, like, instead of being 20th in the league, maybe being like league average in that space is something what they're looking to do. The opinion of John Shipley was that Jacoby Myers would play in 2 wide receiver sets because he's a good blocker, and then it would be either Brian Thomas or Parker Washington. Doesn't know which one, but that they have interchangeable skill sets that they could use in that situation. Also noted that Bashal Tutin is passing the eye test. Liam Cohen has just said that Tutin made the jump this offseason. He looks really good. Koziel can win the tight end 2 job if he can stay on the field for run blocking. And then Bretton Strange and Parker Washington will likely get extensions, and they don't really want to trade Parker Washington. For the Panthers, it sounds like the Panthers plan on Jonathan Brooks to participate in joint practices in the preseason, which is great. We want to see it. Obviously some risk there. And then the Panthers have seen some growth from Xavier Legette, but he's still competing with Chris Brazzell for wide receiver 3. So Coker is like locked in wide receiver 2, going to play pretty much every single snap. Same with Tet. And then it's just a matter of, like, when they have 11 personnel out there, is it going to be Brazzell or Xavier Legette? Keep reading great things about Ryan Flournoy and what he can do. Albert Breer was talking about how legit Dontavian Wicks is, and he said, I'll continue to say that I wouldn't sleep on Dontavian Wicks as a key piece to the Eagles puzzle to replace A.J. Brown. And then Tua is going to be the starter, and Kyler is going to be the starter. George Pickens came to minicamp. The Panthers are doing tight end by committee with Tommy Trimble and Jatavian Sanders. Will Shipley's on the roster bubble, and Hollywood Brown is going to make the roster for the Eagles. Keep reading that the Commanders want to do more 12 personnel, which means we're going to see more Ben Sinnott. And people say that his fit with the team is a lot stronger. And then on top of that, I keep reading that the Commanders are going to go wide receiver by committee for wide receiver 2 if they don't sign an Ayuk or Diggs. Darius Slayton could have a big role if Malik Neighbors misses time because he's like the longest tenured Giant. He's going to be the wide receiver 2 by all reports. Ashton Dulin is the wide receiver 3 for the Colts right now, unless they sign a vet. Watson versus Shador, I talked about this already. It's a tight contest. It basically comes back to who can show better, if Shador can show better accuracy, which he was really bad at last year. Calvin Ridley is in a competition for wide receiver 3. The veteran is entrenched in a competition for reps at receiver behind Tate and Wan'Dale Robinson. Sophomore Chimere DK and Alec Iomanor threatened to eat into his workload. I think this is real. We're going to see what ends up happening. I think it'll be Ridley to start the season, and then you're going to see these other guys working their way in there. Cardinals notes, Jeremiah Love looks the part. He's earning first-team reps. We're not concerned about him. He's going to be a beast, only worried about the offense in general. Uh, there's a numbers game at running back if healthy. So Connor and Benson are expected back in training camp, and then they might try to look to move one of them. In terms of the scheme, there's going to be more motion. They're simplifying the playbook, and then they want to do more 12 personnel with Tip Ryman, who's an Illinois grad like myself. Buck schematics. Okay, so the pistol formation has made a return, and there's been a decent focus on the run game and passes to the team's running backs, which is great for Bucky Irving. Robinson's going to use the wide zone attack. Yeah, just really interesting how they're doing all of that and the way that they're going to utilize Chris Godwin in the slot too. A lot of optimism on the Eagles' new offense. The way that their scheme is, they're a wide zone rushing attack. I think we haven't seen it much from Saquon Barkley because he hasn't been in a situation like this, but I think that it could end up being really, really strong for him. Scheme splits don't really like hold over from year to year, but I think that especially for guys that like haven't been in a system like this, but I think this could be a really big season for him on the ground again. The Falcons are thinking about doing more 12 personnel. Their tight end 2 is Austin Hooper or Charlie Werner. So that would really help like their receivers. So like Pitts and Drake London, because Hooper and Warner are not like big target earners. And then Branch has been the talk of OTAs. He has electric speed, playmaking that Kevin Stefanski and his offensive staff will find a role for. And then obviously he's going to be a punt returner as well. Not going to address that. Elijah Surratt looks like he belongs for the Ravens and plays with confidence at the catch point. He looks way more polished than Lane. And Lane looks good, but it's just that Surratt looks really, really good. Keep hearing that it feels like the Commanders are going to be a committee back situation. So, but JCM, Bill, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, whatever you want to call him, has perhaps the best chance of becoming the Commanders' lead back in 2026. But he needs to get better in pass pro and receiving. White is one of the several running backs in the Commanders' committee approach to the backfield because of his pass catching abilities. And then Katrin Allen is going to be a short yardage option. Okay, the Jaguars had a deal in place for J.K. Dobbins, and then on top of that, R.J. Harvey tore his labrum and had off-season surgery. The Dobbins thing was super interesting. We'll get into that in a minute. An article from the Dallas Morning News talked about Ryan Flournoy, Jaden Blue, and Phil Maffa being prospective breakout candidates. It's my opinion, and we're going to see this later too, but it's my opinion that if Javonte missed time, that it would just be a split between Blue and Maffa, and Blue would do the pass catching role, and Maffa would do all goal line and short yardage. Jarquez Hunter might not make the Rams roster. Ladd had a little bit of a hamstring thing that he went through. It's just good to like keep in the back of your head for training camp. The Texans keep talking about wanting more 12 and 13 personnel, and then they might use some two back looks as well. Again, emphasizing that the Commanders are looking at like a wide receiver by committee if they don't sign Ayuk or Diggs. Jets, Cardinals, Dolphins, and Browns were listed as interested by Briere for Brendan Sorsby. And then I think that it'll probably be a second or third round pick that ends up winning it. Keep reading that Malik Washington has really strong chemistry with Malik Willis, and that Greg Dulcich and Malik Washington are like the clear top 2 targets. Again, Bucky Irving and Kenneth Gainwell are 1A, 1B, and they just kind of go by hot hand. And then Sean Tucker is going to factor into short yardage and goal line. David Montgomery is going to be a workhorse this year, and Woody Marks will probably play in like that Dare Agumbawale role. long down and distance, third downs, special teams, stuff like that. Raiders were really, really interested in getting Jalen Nailor. He was like their top target this offseason, and his analytics are really strong. Obviously, that doesn't always translate to a full-time role, especially when you have guys like Justin Jefferson around you that are, drawing coverage. Rashee Rice was released from jail, and he's unlikely to be suspended. He's one of the best values on the board right now, in my opinion. Eli Heidenreich is just basically his roster spot comes down to special teams. Gunnar Helm's going to play a big role in the offense. I probably have like 3 other tweets on this. Seahawks running backs, basically it was a 50-50 split between Holani and Jadarian Price in the spring. Price can seize control in the training camp. Holani is more reliable in the pass game, and then Emmanuel Wilson is change of pace third back and power back, which is exactly what we talked about earlier. This one's interesting. Parker Washington actually performed way better as a wide receiver, like out wide rather than the slot last year, which gives me hope for what he can do in 2 wide receiver sets, potentially instead of Brian Thomas or Jacoby Myers. Josh Palmer is competing for wide receiver 3 with Skylar Bell and Keon Coleman. I think they're going to give it to Skylar Bell at some point in the season. That's just my opinion. Damon Claiborne is making the 53-man roster for the Vikings. Darius Slayton is still the wide receiver 2 for the Giants. Kyle Williams seems to be uninvolved in the Patriots offense right now. So probably not a guy you want to draft. Kayshon Boutte, if the Patriots keep him, he could start. And then Dubs can play in the slot, and A.J. Brown can play the Z. Cold step chart, it looks like DJ Giddens is listed as RB2, but he's still in a battle with Seth McGowan, who was listed as RB3, and then Ashton Dulin is wide receiver 3. Lots of positivity on Gunnar Helm from me and others. Some risks for the Texans wide receivers. So they're expecting jumps from Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Plus, obviously there's Tank Dell ambiguity. The Texans could still look to free agency for another playmaker, and they could look into Diggs as well, which would then limit Jalen Noel. Rashee Rice got out of jail, and he actually looked pretty fluid in his running out of jail. So there was some jokes about that. Justin Herbert's tweaking his footwork. All of it's meant to help their short pass game. Baker Mayfield was working with Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan this offseason. It's weird that Emeka Egbuka wasn't there, but it's nice to hear that he was working with the other 2, which may mean that there's some value for those guys. Saints wide receiver roles, the thought process is that Tyson is a great intermediate and underneath route runner, while Olave can work deep portions of the field. I'm actually writing an article about like route depth and how much that matters. I'd be concerned on Olave if he's truly just going to be more of like a deep threat. Dan Quinn is going to spend a lot of time at camp with the running backs to just see like kind of who looks the best. Cowboys are setting the table for Jaden Blue, and he just kind of needs to keep his head on straight in order for him to be a factor in this offense. Oh, it looks like USA scored. Hell yeah. Dan Quinn mentioned De'Ami Brown and Van Jefferson as impressive on the outside, Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey on the inside, and he didn't mention anything about Antonio Williams. I'm not going to read much into it yet, but I don't think that Antonio Williams is like guaranteed like a very strong role as much as we thought he was. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt came back to practice. Tyquan Thornton is like pretty much locked in as the Chiefs wide receiver 3. He's going to play like their deep threat role. This is interesting. I was looking at Marvin Harrison and what his route tree looked like versus Devontae Adams. And when I did like just like the basic math of, hey, if he just ran all the same routes and you take his targets per route run per all of those routes, like what would it look like? And his targets per route run drops because he wasn't targeted as much on the routes that Devontae Adams runs. 53-man roster for the Commanders. Jerry McNichols is the surprise there that is making it. And then Jerome Ford and Van Jefferson don't make it. Tua is probably going to win the QB battle for the Falcons. Ladd, they said it was a minor injury. He was back doing individual drills. Chris Bell is going to start on PUP most likely, and they don't think he'll come back until November. Patriots are mixing and matching receivers with A.J. Brown and Romeo Doubs. They want Doubs to be in the slot, but they're still putting in Pop Douglas, Efton Chisholm, who are slot-only kind of guys, and then Mac Hollins is also rotating with the first team. Oscar Delp came back to practice, and he absolutely crushed. And they're thinking he's a guy that can help unlock 12 personnel for them a little bit more this year. Bo Nix went to practice. Sean Payton loves J.K. Dobbins. Let's just lock that in stone. R.J. Harvey is expected to be full go, even though he had a torn labrum. The team really likes Jacoby Myers. He blocks. He's good in the red zone. He can gain separation. He's just a solid football player. He could be a really good pick too. I just don't. The upside with him is like lower, but he's going to probably beat his ADP. George Pickens is not going to hold out. He needs to prove it, and then he's going to get a mega deal. Jordan Tyson is still rehabbing. Chris Olave is still in the same protocol. He has blood clots. Reports are that he's on schedule. Alvin Kamara is limited for now. Kendre Miller is still working his way back. He participated in walkthroughs. And then Devin Neal is rehabbing after a small injury. That running back room is really interesting behind Travis Etienne. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has a chance to lead a running back room that teammate blank. Krosky-Merritt still has work to do becoming the starter, though. As Quinn said, he and his staff wants to see improvement in pass protection in the pass game. Basically, the Commanders don't want it to be very obvious when someone's in the game that it's either a run or a pass. And they keep talking about how they're trying to marry the two and do some disguising. So it's not surprising that they want Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt to get better at the pass game. Kaytron Allen looks good. He's going to look better in pads because he's more of like a big bruising back. Gunnar Helm keeps doing well. Devon Vele will play a little bit more this year than he did last year. Whenever they go in 11 personnel, he'll be the wide receiver 3. Jim Harbaugh called Trey Harris, Ladd McConkey, and Quentin Johnston 3 elite receivers. Isaac Tesla is like locked in as the wide receiver 3. I think we all knew that. Cam Ward's like kind of core so far at OTAs was Wan'Dale Robinson, Carnell Tate, Calvin Ridley, Daniel Bellinger, and Gunnar Helm. Again, that Ridley spot could be up for grabs. Benson keeps looking good in practice and is a better fit for the David Blau offense. And Sam Laporta is healthy. Brian Schottenheimer keeps saying great things about Ryan Flournoy and that he's like the first one on the field and last one off the field. He's always throwing with Dak, catching passes from Dak, and then he's kind of worked his way up the food chain in the right way. Also says really good things about Jaden Blue. Lad's really excited about the new scheme and pairing with Mike McDaniel. He's looking at cut-ups of how to understand the ways defensive backs use leverage at the line of scrimmage. And then he didn't want to rush back from his injury. Brian Schottenheimer again called Blue and Javonte a 1-2 punch with Jaden's ability to hurt you out of the backfield as a receiver. And Javonte is more of a bruiser and a pounder who's going to score 12 to 13 touchdowns, but Blue can be a change of pace complement to Javonte. Everybody keeps talking really great stuff about Jalen Waddle. Everything out of practice is like, dude, this guy's just different than what we have, which just tells you, like, they had Courtland Sutton as their wide receiver one. Like, this guy is way better. Everybody says that Wicks is going to have a role. I think we need to just put that in our heads that Dontavian Wicks is going to play some sort of role in this Eagles offense. Harbaugh was talking about Omarion Hampton. He said, when I watch his tape, I smile. I think it fits it. Think this system fits him great. Omarion Hampton, Keaton Mitchell, Kamani Vidal, that's a strong group. Got a chance to have a big year for Omarion, and I completely agree. I think it's going to be a big year for him. Keep hearing good things about A.D. Mitchell. While the connection between Geno Smith and A.D. Mitchell has heated up, the quarterback's connection with Garrett Wilson has been a work in progress. But I'm not worried about Garrett Wilson. I think he's going to be great. But it's nice to hear that A.D. Mitchell and Geno are doing well together so far. Josh Downs will have more opportunities given the fact that Michael Pittman is no longer there. Chris Ballard earlier in the offseason said Josh Downs is freaking good. I'm excited to give him more opportunities. So we'll see if he plays in 2 wide receiver sets. More on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, that he had a hamstring injury. It's just something to keep in mind later. Jalen Coker is a wide receiver too. He changed his diet. He's on a training plan, and that he's got his head on straight in general. Devontae Walker's stock is up. They didn't sign a veteran, which is a sign of faith in him. And he took advantage of increased opportunities this offseason, looks ready to become a weekly offensive contributor. So Devontae Walker could be the wide receiver 3, and he has to hold off Elijah Surratt and Jacoby Layton for that wide receiver 3 role. Basically, the Jaguars were looking for a running back to help supplement Bashal Tutin, and so that's why they were interested in Dobbins. And then they struck out on Dobbins and then added Chris Rodriguez. They want a complementary backfield right now. That doesn't mean that Tutin can't do everything, but they just didn't want the risk of only having Tutin. Some speculation on RB2 for the 49ers, which sounds like is Jordan James right now. But again, it's a 50-50 battle. That'll get figured out in training camp. Lots on Isaac Tesla. Basically, he's a core part of the offense now. Zachariah Branch keeps making explosive plays, and he's had an impressive start. Hopefully, Olamide Zaccheaus isn't blocking him from playing. Jonah Coleman, I keep reading that he looks really impressive in practices. He is standing out. Like, I know it's hard with running backs in training camp and stuff like that, but that he looks like the real deal right now. And that he's very decisive in how he runs, and that he's just a big guy, and he looks like he can contribute across the board. Some Panthers wide receiver usage items. So it sounds like it's going to be hard to get Tet and Jalen Coker off the field again. Those guys are going to play all the time. And that Xavier Legette and Chris Brazzell are basically competing for snaps right now. And that Brazzell will probably get those clear out opportunities deep down the field. And then Legette could be a gadget weapon that they use. Patriots are looking at veteran tight ends. I keep saying that. O-line continuity for the Broncos is another reason why I'm like really bullish on Jalen Waddle, is that I just think that they're insulated from being in a terrible situation because they have a good offensive line, continuity. Bo Nix, year 3, I just think the table is set. Like, he's clearly the best wide receiver on the team, and there's so much opportunity, and he does run like a really strong route tree that translates to fantasy. J.C. Latham got injured, which is not good for the Titans. He's pretty much their best offensive lineman, him and Skoronski. Keep reading about Ben Sinnott being a better fit for this offense. A.D. Mitchell keeps getting high praise from the coaches. Tua's going to be QB1. Delp had a big day. He seems like he's going to be a contributor this year. Okay, so Javonte Williams missed like part of team drills, and there was something going around that said Phil Maffa got the first reps with the first team. Jaden Blue actually commented on this, and he was like, "Dude, it was just one rep." I think that if Javonte got hurt, it would be Maffa just filling in the Javonte like rushing stuff, mainly in like the short yardage stuff, the inside runs, A and B gap stuff, and then Jaden Blue would get like an elevation of his role, which is more like pass catching, and then outside runs. For the Bucks wide running back room, I keep saying this. Bucky's the number 1 guy for the Bucks, but it will be more of an 1A, 1B split with Kenneth Gainwell. The Cowboys are going to stay in 11 personnel. That's their best personnel. All their best players are the 3 receivers and then Jake Ferguson. Carson Beck's probably not going to start week 1, but they will start him at some point if they don't get Sorsby. Kevin Stefanski talked about basically how he could utilize Kyle Pitts, and he said that he was really excited about his versatility, lining him up in line, wide, and in the backfield. I'm just more bullish about the fact that they said in line because that's not something we've historically seen from him. Albert Breer thinks that Ladd McConkey and Trey Harris are going to be like breakout players, and Justin Herbert will compete for MVP. Chigga Conquo looks like he's the number 2 target behind Terry McLaurin. Let's see if they sign Diggs or Ayuk, and that could probably change. Mike McDaniel told Omarion Hampton that he reminds him of Terrell Davis. He's just pumping up his guys. I mean, I think that Omarion Hampton could go absolutely nuclear this year. It just depends on what the running back share split is, but he has the talent, that's for sure. Jack Besh looks like he hasn't popped at OTAs. Alec Ayamanor is getting reps with Cam Ward. Wan'Dale Robinson seems like he's been Cam Ward's favorite target. J.K. Dobbins is the lead back and primary rusher. R.J. Harvey is the joker. Jonah Coleman is really good insurance for Dobbins and might kind of feed into his carries a little bit. Garrett Wilson looks good. Jalen Waddle looks good. Zachariah Branch looks good. And Kenneth Gainwell keeps looking good. Phil Maffa is more of a Javonte style replacement, and Jaden Blue has his own role. More confirmation there. Evan Ingram had a strong camp. There's more talk on him that he's like going to be involved in this offense. So it's something that we should just keep in the back of our heads, that like maybe we aren't going to get the Justin Jolie season that we thought. Geno Smith is a big upgrade from Justin Fields. No shit. A.D. Mitchell is a positive, keeps getting positive coach speak and player speak. And Garrett Wilson is connecting well with Geno. Omar Cooper isn't like as involved right now, but they expect him to do more like when they do like YAC heavy stuff. And Tim Patrick's not doing much either, so you can pretty much guarantee that Omar Cooper will at least be wide receiver 3. Again, the Chiefs are not likely to bring in a veteran receiver. Skipping over things that like are just repeats of stuff that I've already said. This was interesting. The Raiders are unlikely to sign Stephon Diggs. So they're really just kind of leaning into Trey Tucker and Jalen Naylor being their top 2, with then either Dante Thornton or Jack Besh potentially getting more snaps at wide receiver 3. Okay, this was interesting. Basically, the Rams used Terrence Ferguson in this more like Tutu Atwell receiver role, where he was more of like a deep threat, but he's a tight end. But he's listed as a tight end, but he's more their wide receiver 3. They're basically saying that they expect him to have a bigger role this year. They bring rookies along slowly, and that he'll kind of be in the game plan this year. I did like a little bit of a comp like search for him, and it turned out very similar to Kyle Pitts from 2023, when Kyle Pitts basically had like 600 yards receiving, but it was like all deep heavy stuff. Like he was just basically a vertical receiver. Kind of interesting, very unique profile for a tight end. An article that kind of pointed out that Jalen Coker is like there's like some on-off splits of him basically like being really good for this offense. And for Bryce Young, like when Xavier Legette was in there, the offense was bad, but when Jalen Coker's in there, it goes so much better. And I mean, he's a talented player, so I could see that. Dan Quinn mentioned that Rachaad White has had been a standout in the offseason. I think that's notable. This podcast talked about Rashid Shaheed doing really great stuff in training or in mini camp and OTAs, and that he's not only just running vertical routes. I think that's pretty big. Manuel Wilson is going to be a bruiser. We've talked about that. Jadarian Price should be the guy, but they also like George Halani and that they're buying Jadarian Price stock. It was all kind of like speculation. Cam Ward, some reports that Cam Ward didn't look as bad as we actually heard. And then Wan'Dale Robinson and Cam Ward have had really strong chemistry. And then Carnell Tate like looked good early, but then he kind of tapered off. And that Shamir DK looked pretty solid at receiver. Brian Schottenheimer said that the Cowboys are going to use George Pickens. Like they're going to move him around a little bit more. Last year, he was like the leader in just being an outside wide receiver. So it'd be really interesting if they started moving him in the slot a little bit. David Montgomery is a 3-down bell cow, and Woody Marks will be Daria Gumbawale. Zachariah Branch keeps getting first-team reps. Hopefully, Olamide Zaccheaus doesn't do anything. Running back by committee for the Commanders. Sam Laporta is healthy. He looks like he's going to be full go for training camp. That's huge. There was a little bit of a debate between two physical therapists on X about J.K. Dobbins and his recovery from this Lisfranc injury. One that's like more bullish, like, hey, he's going to get injured again, which means it's bullish for Jonah Coleman, RJ Harvey. And then one that was like, I'm not worried about it. So more bullish for J.K. Dobbins. This was big. All the Bucs wide receivers looked really solid in minicamp, but Chris Godwin looks like the front runner so far. So Godwin got most looks in OTAs and mandatory minicamp, and to our eye, he still seems like the front runner for the team's wide receiver 1 as it stands. I mean, that slot role in Zach Robinson's offense, I think, is pretty big. So I could see it. And I think that Ibuka, if they moved him into the slot, he would dominate too. But it sounds like it's going to be Chris Godwin. Coleman stood out in a major way at Jonah Coleman stood out in a major way at minicamp and made it clear that the Broncos have more than just a J.K. Dobbins insurance policy on their hands. And Coleman is a force to be reckoned with. I think he's going to have a role. If Dobbins gets hurt, which he always does, then Jonah Coleman could be a guy that ends up being a league winner down the stretch. Greg Dulcich hype. He's basically the Dolphins wide receiver one right now. Phil Maffa is Thunder. Jaden Blue is Lightning. They're going to split the backfield if Javonte got hurt. Jonah Coleman, again, looks decisive, hits the hole hard. They think he'll take the Tyler Beatty role, which was like more long down and distance, kind of like a Dare Gumbawale, but that he might have more rushing upside too. More Waddle hype. He's just incredible, basically. Everything is like, dude, this guy is standing out. Consistent with other reports on Evan Ingram, with new offensive coordinator Davis Webb taking over the play calling duties, Ingram could be trusted to be a bigger part of the offense. It's very notable that Ingram has a strong relationship with Davis Webb from their time in New York. Chigu Okonkwo and Rashad White stood out for the Commanders, and Jalen Waddle looks explosive, as we keep hearing. Isaiah Bond and Denzel Boston performed well at minicamp. Casey Conception didn't pop as much, but they're basically just saying to throw caution to the wind, like it's minicamp. We'll see what happens. Titans trending up. Tyjae Spears. I'm truly fascinated to see what Brian Dable has planned for Tyjae Spears. Chimere DK used all over the formation, and the staff trusts him. Wan'Dale Robinson and Gunnar Helm have developed strong chemistry with Cam Ward. Browns have been coy about interest in Sorsby, but it sounds like they might actually be interested in him. There's a Xavier Thomas projection yesterday that was talking about him getting like 400 yards receiving and 200 rushing. I don't think that's realistic. But it does show like, hey, maybe they do have a plan for him. He might take over for Khalif Raymond at some point in the slot, or not in the slot, but just in the offense in general. And I think that's probably true. Jaguars updates. Brenton Strange is looking to have a breakout season. The rookie tight ends were brought in to take off some wear and tear in the blocking game, which I think is important so that he can do more in the pass game. It's true. And Parker Washington is set to be a week one starter for the first time in his career, which is also true. More AD Mitchell hype that he's building strong chemistry with Geno Smith. Commander schematics, so they're going to go to like a zone blocking scheme. I think I knew that already, but just want to make sure others knew that, which is actually better for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. They want to do less RPOs, but have more play action, more motion, more huddles. And they're going to move receivers around a lot more, which we've heard in the past. Still uncertain about Malik Neighbors' timeline. Darius Slayton is most likely the wide receiver 2. J.K. Dobbins is going to be the lead back. There's little doubt the Broncos are making Dobbins a central part of their plans for improving the offense in 2026. We knew that already. Broncos are going to do more play action and use it to attack deeper down the field. So much positivity on Rashad White, and then rotation for the Commanders at wide receiver 2. Jeff Hafley said that the Dolphins don't have a wide receiver 1, but he has been pretty complimentary of Malik Washington and basically called him a slot receiver. We're going to see an expanded role for Bashal Tootin this year, which we already knew. Tua is going to win the job. Kyler Murray is going to win the job. And then there's a split decision on Shedeur and Deshaun Watson. Trevor Lawrence feels much more comfortable going into year 2 in the system. He can play so much faster with much less stress. He's able to react to the defense much better now, and he has more command, and the timing of everything is going to be more improved this year. I'm actually really excited to see how this goes this season. Texans teammate Justin Watson said some nice things about Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. Two guys have really shown up are Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Had good first years, put a ton of work in the offseason, really expanded. I've seen Jalen Noel take that slot role and really run with it. And man, Jaden Higgins on the outside release has been great, playing with the big frame and a lot of speed. So my TLDR on that one is that Noel seems like a slot only player and Higgins is playing on the outside, which I was hoping that we'd hear like they're versatile, moving guys around, all sorts of stuff. Some stuff on Gunnar Helm, Jameer DK, and Alec Iamanor. Helm looks bulked up. He has incredible hands, but they want him to be a little bit more physical in the run game, and that should hopefully help him longer term. DK, they're using him all over the place. They're being versatile with him. They don't want him to be slot only, especially because that means that because Wandale is mainly a slot player, that they wouldn't be able to also use DK. So it's good to know that they're like moving him around a little bit. And then the Titans like Alec Iamanor because he's like a true X receiver, and they think that he'll be a strong contributor for this year. Ayuk's going to go to the Commanders, just a matter of when. There's a new Bills coach that used to play secondary for them, and he's been very impressed with Skylar Diggs, and he said he reminds him of a young Stephon Diggs. I might have said Skylar Diggs, Skylar Bell. And that's it. Thank you guys for the tight 10. That's it.